I have 28 years of law enforcement service, and the Office of Sheriff is very unique because, one of the politicians tonight, Rob Staffschild, said, "Why are you running for office?" Well, for me as sheriff, it was different. My whole career had centered around law enforcement. I grew up, the man I am today is because of the family I was raised in, my core values. My dad's 85, my mom's 83, they're still with us, and I still take life lessons from them. And I think that's what shapes our society, is this two-parent God and family is what we need. I always say law enforcement years are like dog years. These are tough on a person. I've got 28 of them, and when I'm done with this next term, this is it, I'm in my second term, I will have 32 years of law enforcement service. So. I want to get in tonight to talk about my love for the Second Amendment and how I use my office of sheriff to do everything I can to support and preserve and protect our God-given right to keep and bear arms. My wife will probably tell you I have too many guns. She's sitting with us tonight, but she'll probably complain I have too many guns and I've spent too much money on my guns. But I'm tired of being villainized. Every time a criminal does a criminal act, I get blamed as an honest gun owner in this country. And that needs to stop. I also don't think we need to continue to blame an inanimate object for people's behavior. And we do that far too often in this country. When I took office, and I want to stress tonight too, all of you should try to get involved in politics at your local level. That has such a big influence on your life, more so probably than anything they do in Washington. Your local politicians can influence your way of life. I was lucky to take office in 2018. I was elected, started in 19, and shortly after in office, 2 of our county board members came to me and they said, "We'd like to make Polk County a Second Amendment sanctuary." And I thought, what a great opportunity. I mean, this is what I'm about. I've been an avid gun enthusiast. I hunt. My dad's 85. We have a family deer camp we do every year. I bring 13 guns to the deer camp, just so everybody knows. I think I have a little problem with probably bringing a few too many. But nevertheless, these county board supervisors, Brad Olson and Brian Masters, promoted this Second Amendment sanctuary and asked if I would support it. And I said, absolutely. So we got that together and we got that passed. So in 2020, we got Polk County a nice Second Amendment sanctuary. And that's important. That sends a message that we believe in our individual rights and freedom in this county. Thank you. I want you to view law enforcement as your guardians. That's really what our role is. We're guardians to keep the criminals out of your front door. We're guardians to keep you free. We need freedom in this country. That's what this country was founded on, freedom. And every day, a little bit of that is getting chipped away. And I feel a sense of duty to stand for your freedom. So I want to tell you that today I got to swear in a new deputy. And that's very rare. It's hard to find people that want to do this job anymore. But we hired a fine young gentleman today, and I got to swear him in. And I take that very serious. We face each other. We raise our right hands, and I swear them in to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin to the best of your abilities, so help you God. That's our oath we take, and we take that very serious. So, as an avid gun collector and the sheriff of this fine county, I like to share this story that I don't just talk, I actually take action. And I happened to be down in Clear Lake at one of our great gun shops down there, the True Value Hardware. I was looking at guns. I'm not going to lie. I'm a government worker. I got a little bit of spare time once in a while. And in walks an ATF agent. And he's got a backpack on and kind of a southern accent. And I thought, oh, it looks a little strange. And I'm dressed in plain clothes that day. And he walks up to the counter and he says, "Hi, I'm with the ATF. I'm here for your audit." they're like, oh, sure, okay. And he started emptying out the backpack and getting his paperwork out. And I thought, well, what better time to introduce myself as the sheriff of this Second Amendment sanctuary than right now? So I pulled my badge out and I said, I'm Sheriff Brent Waak, and welcome to our Second Amendment sanctuary. And he kind of stepped back and I said, well, I said, I want you to understand something. You're here to do your job. They've agreed to this. They're a licensed firearm dealer. That's fine. But I said, if you ever come to this county to enforce an unconstitutional executive order from Joe Biden, you will meet me head on. I said, we're not going to play those games. We have our Constitution and we honor it here in Polk County. And he was quick to pull his business card out and hand me his business card and tell me that he thinks similarly to me. And I said, well, I understand that, but your boss in Washington doesn't think that way. They don't have our backs. And I said, I'm the sheriff of this county and I have the backs of my citizens. That's how I feel. So that was one opportunity. I also like to use my office frequently to promote the Constitution. And I heard that the San Francisco board voted on a resolution declaring the NRA a terror organization. And this was a number of years ago, if you remember that. So I fired up the email machine and I didn't curse. I promised myself I would not curse on this email or the person wouldn't read it. But I did send an email to the board of their supervisors, the chairperson, and I said, you know, I've been a law-abiding citizen my whole life. I've taken an oath to uphold the law. I was raised by good parents. And you now put me in the same category as what Osama bin Laden would be lumped into, as a terrorist. And I was really offended that they would do this. But that's what the other side is thinking. They want to take our rights away. This is no longer sneaky how they hide it. They used to say things like, you know, common sense gun control. They're very open about it. They want to disarm America. They absolutely do. So, one of the other things I did is I learned that the ATF was working on this underhanded rulemaking process to make a lot of us citizens who bought a certain type of firearm a felon. And I just want to briefly talk about a pistol brace, because maybe some of you don't know what this is. But basically, if you had a pistol and attached a brace, which originally was designed to help people that struggled to hold a pistol, it was a way to enhance shooting the firearm. Now, a lot of people would take that and shoulder the firearm with it, but it still was designed to be a pistol brace. In the ATF, when you bought one of these 10 years ago, they sent you a letter saying this has been approved by the ATF. Now, in January of this year, they decided to do an end around and say, we changed our mind. And if you have this item, on the end of May 31st, you will be a felon. You'll be charged with a felony and face 10 years in prison for something they told you you could buy. Now, one of the problems with this is this violates our rights on many fronts, not just the Second Amendment, but there's no grandfather clause. I was told I could buy this. They're going to deprive me of property without just compensation. But even that wouldn't have been enough. It goes, you know, it's ex post facto. It goes back to the date that you bought this thing. So that's not how we do things. It violates Administrative Procedures Act, which means that a government entity cannot circumvent the legislative branch, that they can't make rules that's the legislative branch's policy. That's their right to make the rules in the laws, not some government three-letter agency. So I got all fired up and I had my wife proofread my letter because I was pretty passionate when I wrote it. And I'll just briefly read the letter to you that I wrote. And then I was able to meet with our Congressman, Tom Tiffany. And God bless him, because he has our backs, he has our best interests, and he's approachable. And I handed him this letter, and I asked him to hand deliver it to the director of the ATF. So I knew if I mailed it to him or sent an email, it would get filed. But I thought if my congressman takes this letter to Washington, it's going to actually be read. So my letter was real quick, I'll read it. As the elected sheriff of Polk County, Wisconsin, and the guardian of my citizens' constitutional rights, I'm writing this letter to inform you that the recent rule change pertaining to pistol braces is government overreach. This is unconstitutional to allow my citizens for over 10 years to purchase this type of firearm, and then with the strike of your bureaucratic pen, potentially make my citizens felons. Polk County is a Second Amendment sanctuary, and as of May 2020, I will not allow your tyrannical government agents to victimize my citizens. I stand ready to defend the rights of honest, law-abiding residents here in Polk County. I will take no action in enforcement on this rule change or allow any federal agents to take actions against my citizens. I strongly recommend you cancel this recent rule change as it is a clear violation of the Constitution. You are violating your oaths of office, and now we the people lose all trust and faith in your ability to do your jobs. So that was the letter. So that letter was hand-delivered to Congressman, or to the director, Steve Dettelbeck, who, by the way, I watched him do congressional hearings. Very unimpressive person, this Stephen Dettelbach. He didn't even quite understand the rule that his name is on. He didn't quite even get it right when he was talking about it. Anyway, and that's another thing. I do feel bad for our elected officials that have to sit in rooms with some of these people that they're just despicable people, and they have to sit and work with those people. So hats off. I couldn't do it. I couldn't go to Washington and walk around there and get things done because I don't like some of those people. I'll stay here in Polk County. I was the first sheriff that stood up to the ATF on this issue, and I got a few people that reached out and wanted to do some podcasts. So I was very blessed. I had Sheriff Mack, who's out of Arizona. He runs this constitutional sheriff's group. We did a podcast. The gentleman, Bill Osmolsky, that was just up here talking about 9/11, he and I did a podcast. I also met a guy who's an attorney for the U.S. Concealed Carry Association, Tom Grieve, and we did a video about the letter, and then we did a second video on the follow-up, and those two videos have almost 1 million views nationwide right now. So pretty cool that we can get our message out there. Where this stands right now, it's in the courts, and I'm confident the courts are going to rule in our favor. That's the one thing we have going for it. When it gets to that level, our constitutional rights are pretty respected right now. We have a good court, so I hope to see this defeated, but this should concern all of us. This was a blatant attempt to criminalize things that we were allowed to purchase, and it's extremely concerning. I'll continue to fight this fight. I've had a lot of neat opportunities with the Office of Sheriff, and one of the things I want to talk about too is right now is the unprecedented violence towards law enforcement. You know, for those of you that aren't from directly this region, we lost 3 fine young officers this spring. I felt like all I did was go to funerals for the month of April, May, and June. But it's just heartbreaking to lose those officers. That has an impact on the current staff I have. I've had a few that have gotten out of law enforcement because of these violent acts. Now, I've been blessed to do this job for 28 years. I've never felt like this was a dangerous job. I felt like I've got the tools, I've got the knowledge, and it's a calling to go to the aid of people that need your help. So I'm confident law enforcement will go on because there are still some great people in our community, but it's troubling that we have politicized and villainized law enforcement. You know, when I'm on the job as the sheriff, I'm very apolitical. We deal with crisis, and we respond to crisis, and we help people. Every day, acts of heroic things go on that get little notice, get little attention. We go about our jobs, and we do our jobs to the best of our abilities, and we don't always get it right. One of the things that's very concerning for me is what's coming next year. Let's flash back and look at 2020. What was that like? You know, we had our cities on fire. We had a pandemic. You know, what is going to come next year when power is at stake? There's things that corrupt, we know that, right? Power and money. These are all at stake next year. So band together as strong communities. We can get through anything. You know, I'm blessed to work in Polk County here. I always say we're kind of in that calm eye of a hurricane where it's calm, but around us is a whirlwind. We have Minnesota next to us. We have Illinois south of us. We're kind of in that calm. So I don't know what we're going to see next year, but nothing I think is off the table with what certain groups of people will do to get their message through. Finally, I just want to conclude today by saying that, you know, it is an honor to serve as a sheriff. It's a title that really is special, and I'm blessed just to be able to have this title. And you know, I didn't plan on running for sheriff. I told this story tonight to somebody. I stopped in at a farmer that I knew when I was working as a patrol sergeant, and he looked at me and he said, "Why aren't you the sheriff yet?" And I said, "Well, I hadn't really thought about it. I'm enjoying what I do." And then a few hours later, I stopped at the office, and the current sheriff came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking of probably not running next term. Maybe you should think about it." And I thought, well, twice in one day, that's got to be a sign from up above there. So I believe when you're given little hints in life, you should follow that, and that's what I did. So it's my honor to be the sheriff. It's my honor to defend our rights from the First Amendment to the last amendment. And I can tell you, we have to hold some of our officials accountable if they violate their oaths. And that's what's very troubling. This New Mexico governor who just came out and said she's going to ban guns in cities if the crime rate gets up, she should be held accountable for that. If I threw the Constitution out tomorrow and started searching homes without proper cause, I would expect that I would be charged criminally and probably go to prison for that. That's why I follow the Constitution when I work. So I'd like to see that our society holds some of these people accountable that openly violate our rights. And so I encourage that we have strong leaders in our country that are willing to step up and take risks and make sure that we are doing the right thing. So thank you. Thank you.